Hello. Um, it's been a hot second since I've recorded. It's been, I want to say 4 days, 5 days maybe. Um, I had a small injury that I'm not going to go into. It did not have to do with the Black Widow spider, so don't worry. But I did injure myself, and I've been just I just decided to take some days off from recording, even though I don't really have a huge audience, maybe a couple people, but I see you guys. So I've just been, watching Netflix, really. Been rewatching Avatar since that's on Netflix now. But I wanted to make a video about Jojo's Bizarre Adventure because it's for some years it's been this wild, crazy, bizarre show that just from hearing about it and like seeing things here and there, it doesn't really translate into what it actually is, what the show actually is, and what the message is that it's trying to get across. So I went and watched season 1 and 2. But I think the better way to say it would be to say that I watched The Phantom Blood and Stardust Crusaders. So for those of you who don't know, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure is an anime that follows the Joestar family as they progress through the ages. They start, I guess it must have been when would it have been? It would have been before the First World War. Is that right? Before the First World War? Yeah. Okay, so before the First World War, there was the Joestar family, and they had this accident where the mother died, and I'm just trying to remember because it's actually been a few months since I saw the first part. But the mother died in an accident. They were going across the mountain, and I don't know, their carriage wrecked. Some random hooligan and his son pulled up and saw them and were about to rob them blind when the head of the family wakes up and says, "Thank goodness for you saving me. Now I'll repay you with life debt." And that's where the whole thing starts. Suffice to say, it doesn't have to do with the father, it has to do with the son. The son is Jonathan, and Jonathan is the first Jojo, and then the next is Joseph, and Joseph takes place in right around World War II, like right on top of World War II. I'm not sure exactly when on the timeline, but World War II-ish. And then you have Jotaro, who takes place, he's in the everything I just said took place within season 1. Jotaro takes place in season 2, and each season has its own name. The first season is Phantom Blood, for reasons that are obvious if you've seen the show, and the second season is you're about to say it and then you forget. Isn't that great? The second season is Stardust Crusaders, and I have opinions. So if you don't want to hear opinions on the show, or you don't want to hear my review of what I think was good and bad about the TV show, this is your chance to say fair enough and click off. Hopefully I'll get more views on this video just because I have some ideas for marketing, but we'll see. So I'll start with my favorite season, which is season 1, The Phantom Blood. So the I guess the father's name was also Jonathan, maybe like Jonathan Senior. His son Jonathan grows up, and as he's growing up, the beggar who is trying to rob Jonathan's father, Jonathan Senior, in the carriage accident, that beggar's son, who is named Dio Brando, he shows up after his father dies and asks to claim the life debt. So now Jonathan the younger is with Dio Brando, and they don't like each other, and for good reason. Jonathan hates Dio, and Dio screws with Jonathan immensely. And what this does is it creates this rivalry that they hold for how long? Like 5 to 7 years, until they're older. They hold this rivalry. Now nothing would come of this except that Dio had been. Oh, by the way, obviously there's going to be spoilers here. I'm gonna talk about the whole series and tell you what I think. So Dio has been slowly poisoning Jonathan's father, Jonathan Senior, and I don't even know if that's his name. I'm just he's a Jojo as well, so probably. So he's been slowly poisoning Jonathan Senior, and Jonathan Senior's been getting worse and worse and worse, and no medicine that they have is working. In fact, Dio is the one who's been giving him the medicine, which is the poison, if I can remember that correctly. All the meanwhile, Jonathan the younger, or Jojo, has been experimenting with this mask, this mysterious mask that when blood drips on it, it has these spines that pop out of the back and clasp. And the only thing that Jojo can think is that this was meant to kill someone, that you would drip the blood on the mask and it would clasp onto the back and stab them in the back of the head. So Dio sees this as well and sees that it would be an excellent thing to kill Jojo with, and that way he can get rid of both Jojos, Jonathan the elder and Jonathan the younger, and then he could claim the fortune, because Jonathan the elder, giving good on his oath, his life debt, welcomed him in as a true son. So he's a part of everything. A part of everything up to that point. So, I can't remember exactly what happens, but Jojo decides that Dio is acting shifty and that his father isn't getting better, and he thinks that Dio is poisoning his father. Rightfully so, but he takes the medicine and the medicine and hunts down where it came from, because he knows that Dio always heads to town to get the medicine. And he knows that Dio came from the streets, so he would know how to give poison to someone, because he'd know where to get it. So he goes to the streets, has some adventures, and discovers that it's poison. He comes back and gets back just in time to stop Dio. Now everyone surrounds Dio, and they're all mad and they're all ready to throw him away when he puts on the mask. He puts the mask on. Now Dio previously, in an earlier episode, I'd actually forgotten this, he had put the mask on somebody who was trying to kill him. And when blood hit the mask, it stabbed the man in the back of the head, the mask came off, and the guy turned into a vampire. Dio only survived because it had just been night and it was turning into day, and the sunlight killed the vampire. So there's Dio, with the mask on. They fill him full of bullets because he just tried to kill Joseph Sr. And then, wouldn't you know it, he turns into a vampire. So him and Jojo fight. Everybody else is dead, including Joseph Sr. Him and Jojo the younger fight, and they battle all the way up to the top of the house, which is on fire, because why wouldn't it be? And miraculously, without any training, Jojo manages to somehow not die, which is pretty wild. Just like, you know, it's fantasy and it's very wild, but I enjoyed watching it. That's the whole thing about this series, is despite everything, it's very enjoyable to watch. It's exactly what it is, and it's very enjoyable. So there we are. Dio just got kiboshed, probably, and Jojo is badly injured, and he limps off to go find help. Through one way or another, it comes to his attention that Dio actually isn't dead, and he decides he needs to go hunt him down and stop him before he can do anything else. So he meets all these different people along the way, and they teach him about Hamon, the art of breathing, and it supposedly gives you the ability to manifest energy throughout your body, and different people can do it in different ways. You see much more of what people can do with it as you progress into the later parts of the first season. Just so you know, all of this happens within like 11 episodes, and that's the first part of the Phantom Blood. The rest of it is like a 20 episode thing. I don't actually remember how many episodes there were in the first season, but the rest of it is Joseph. So Jonathan, with a bunch of other people, and there's twists and turns and deaths and triumphs, they find Dio and they kill him. Or so they thought. So Jonathan and his new wife, weeks later, after they thought they'd killed Dio, are on a boat, and they're sailing to the New World, America, to make their life. And when they're on the boat, it becomes apparent that the boat is now infested with zombies that Dio made, and Dio, at this point, is just a head. He is a talking head. And he uses his tentacles that come out of his neck, as we all do have, and he stabs Jonathan in the lungs, preventing him from using Hamon to... I'm saying that really weird. Hamon. They have an accent when they say it, so it's weird for me to say it. Preventing him from fighting Dio, but he still tries, and his wife and baby escape. They escape in a coffin, I think, and they float away, and they're found later and taken to the New World. Then there's a time skip. So Jonathan's dead. The whole point with Dio trying to kill Jonathan was to take his body. And he doesn't. So Dio and Jonathan both go under. They're both dead. And I think I'm gonna stop for just a second to say what I thought of the first part. I loved the first part of the Phantom Blood. The first part of the Phantom Blood was wonderful. It was exactly what it was, and it wasn't copying anything else. It was exactly its own thing. It really reminded me of Castlevania, just because you have this guy who's ripped hunting down a vampire in a castle, and it was exactly like Castlevania. I mean, what can you say? So I really enjoyed the first part. Things I would change, ironically, I sort of felt like the fantasy nature of some of the things, even though they were pretty ludicrous at some points, they sort of came out of nowhere. Like, it would have fit better if there were already some things in the world that matched. Because later in the second season, you see that, oh, everybody has a thing. Everybody has a thing and a power and a thing, which makes them special. And it's like, oh, they're just everywhere. Which is fine, I guess, but it doesn't really translate that well. Take what you will from that. So the rest of the season 1 is my favorite part of Jojo, period. So it follows the story of Joseph Joestar, who is the grandson of Jonathan Jr. So Jonathan died, but his wife and son escaped. His wife and son escaped, and his son got married and had a son. Then his father and mother supposedly died. His father definitely died, but his mother is still alive, and you find out later that she's still alive. But his father died because Dio's zombies were still around infiltrating the US military, Air Force, or whatever. Because Jonathan's son was a US Air Force pilot for World War I. So Joseph Joestar is just chilling in his own hometown, just doing his daily thing, when a member of I keep having to backtrack, and that's very bad for the story, but I keep missing important details, like the detail with Dio and the mask and the random vampire. Like, sorry, I'm a little bit scatterbrained. I keep forgetting the important details. One important detail is there was a member of Jonathan's crew when he was hunting down Dio, who was called Speedwagon. This guy created a company called the Speedwagon Foundation, and he funded technology and hunted down bad things, specifically the masks that made vampires. And they hunted the masks down to this tree, this fossilized tree with a man in it. And they theorized that the man was still alive. But one of the guys that was there, who was also part of Jonathan's crew, he betrayed Speedwagon and the rest of the guys and killed them all, and went after Joseph to kill him too, because he knew that if Joseph ever found out, he would hunt him down. His whole explanation was that he wanted to be beautiful or whatever. So he hunted down Jonathan, and Jonathan beat him soundly, because Jonathan's the best Jojo. And then he explained what he and Speedwagon had seen before committing seppuku off the side of a bridge. Even though he's a vampire, and that probably wouldn't have killed him, but it did kill him, so yeah. So Joseph hunts down Speedwagon because he finds out Speedwagon is still alive, and he's being held by a bunch of Nazis who found the tree, the fossilized tree with the fossilized man. They found the tree, and they started pumping it full of human blood so that they could get it rolling, because obviously the masks take blood. Surely the tree takes blood and you can wake up the guy, right? Makes sense, and that is how it works. So they do wake up the guy, and the guy very quickly learns the language and slips through the pipes and starts killing people. So he and Joseph battle, and Joseph beats him, barely, just barely. He beats him by just a hair. He defeats this guy, and he travels off to fill in the blank country that I can't remember, so that he can find someone who can help him figure out what to do about these fossilized guys who were attached to this tree. Because the guy who was attached to the tree, there was only one, but he found out that there were more, and that these guys, the Pillar Men, are a huge deal and very dangerous. I don't want to go into too much detail because there is quite a lot of detail in this. Suffice to say, he and the mentor who taught Jonathan Jr. how to use Hamon, his mentor's grandson and Joseph are both together. His name's like Zeppelini, I think. They both travel together and they head off into the wild blue yonder to go and find these Pillar Men. They find the Pillar Men, and the Pillar Men, instead of killing them after they were awoken by the Nazis, because the Nazis do that, they awaken these crazy evil guys. Just so you know, there's people who can use Hamon, there's vampires, and then there's the Pillar Men. The Pillar Men are like the apex predators of the planet in this show. So instead of killing them, they put these little rings inside of Joseph. They just slip it inside of him. They phase through him and slip it over his heart and over his lung, I think. And what it does is it will dissolve after a certain amount of days. And once it dissolves, it will release a deadly poison that will kill him immediately. And both of these, 2 of the 3 Pillar Men, put these rings in him because they wanted him to come hunt them down after a suitable amount of time, a suitable amount of training, and then they could have a real battle with him. So Joseph, is sort of screwed because he doesn't know how to fight. So he and Zeppelini's grandson both head off to find someone, this lady who supposedly is a master of Hamon and can teach them exactly how to fight. And they go and they train for a long time, and then they start getting into the battles. And long story short, a lot of crazy stuff happens. I'd have to go into too much detail to even explain it all. Joseph survives. That's the key. Joseph survives, the Pillar Men don't. So that's pretty much that. I know that's a little bit of a cliffhanger. I absolutely loved the second part of the first season. It was really cool, and it was a lot better made than the next season, which everyone loves. I'll start off by saying Jotaro is a punk, and I hate him. He's so stupid and not attentive, and also he doesn't care about anyone. So he's like all of the attitude that you could have with none of the deserving. And you might say that, oh well, later he earns that. Okay, well, we'll see. So the whole point of Stardust Crusaders is Joseph, who's now an old man, he comes and visits his grandson. His daughter married a Japanese man who had a son named Jotaro. Jotaro locked himself in prison and wouldn't leave because he manifested something called a stand. Now, a stand is sort of like a spirit that you can have appear over your shoulder, and it will be controlled by you. But let's say that I had a sword, right? And I cut the spirit. It would cut your body on the same place where I cut the spirit. So it's sort of like a really powerful weapon, but also you have to be careful using it. So Joseph also has one of these, and he brings other people who also have these stands to explain to Jotaro that it's okay, don't freak out, it's just this power that you have. And Joseph comes and talks to Jotaro and says, listen, Dio is back. Yes. So what happened is, remember how Dio was trying to steal Jonathan's body because Jonathan had chopped his head off and his body was disintegrated and all he had was a head left? And so Dio was like, hey, I'm going to take your body because you're definitely worthy. So it turns out he did take Jonathan's body. Then he jumped into a coffin or a crate or something and sunk to the bottom of the ocean. All these years later, someone lifted that coffin out and Dio survived and escaped to Cairo, I think so, Cairo. Middle East. He escaped to the Egypt. That's what it was. Egypt. Well, Cairo's in Egypt, isn't it? So he escaped to Cairo, and Joseph's trying to convince Jotaro to come with him to take care of Dio, because Dio's a big deal, a big problem. And Jotaro is about to refuse, because Jotaro is a punk, when his mom manifests a stand as well. The problem is, if you manifest a stand and you're not strong-willed enough to hold it, then it'll just consume you and you'll die within about, 40 days? I think that's what the time span was. So they have this adventure, and this is the difference between season 1 and season 2, or season 1 and season 2. So in season 1, it was a story-based anime, as I say. Season 2 was what I call an episode-by-episode anime, where it's sort of like the way Pokemon is, or Yu-Gi-Oh, or any of those other ones, where in episode 6, you're fighting the guy who uses the dinosaurs. In episode 10, you're fighting the guy who uses the elephants. It's like each episode you're facing a new obstacle that's sort of different, but it's not like exactly story driven. Like, there is a story behind it, but the story kind of takes second to like whatever current threat you're going into. So they start traveling across the land, and they keep picking up different people who were affected by Dio. And as they go, they fight more and more stand users. Like, all these people who just suddenly had stands. Like, they didn't before, but now they do. Suddenly, like, Hamon was the thing that was... You can only use Hamon against vampires. But no, now there's stands. Which is fine. And, I wouldn't mind the stands as much if they were just sort of like Hamon and then also stands. But it sort of seems like in every series going forward, what with Giorno and Jotaro's half brother, and Jolene and all the rest, Giorno, who is Dio's like Miss Son or something. It sort of seems like they kind of just dismiss Hamon as a thing, and it doesn't have a place anymore, which really sucks. It really does. I thought that, I don't know, it was better than stands. I'll say that. It was definitely better than stands. So they travel through the land, they fight more and more stands, they get to Dio, and they fight him. Just about everybody dies, except for the Jojos. The Jojos both survive. And as well as a few other people survive, but many of the main characters die. The whole point is that Dio needed more blood from the Joestar line to be able to fit into Jonathan's body, because Jonathan's body was sort of rejecting him, as sometimes organs will when you get an organ transplant. So he needed Joseph Joestar to give him his blood, and he did take his blood, and he got super powerful, but then he got beaten. So that was the end of that. And that's basically the end of that season. I mean, there's more details, but again, I'm not trying to go into the details. Season 2 was a lot less fun. It was a lot less, it was a lot more cheesy and saturated, and like, it was very, very, very much like an episode by episode series. And I didn't think it fit in the series, but it has a fan base. Really, I feel like the only thing we can pull from this is season 1 was really wild and crazy and pretty cool. Where was I? So the camera didn't die, but the memory card was full. So I had to stop for a hot second to pop it over onto the computer, which is right here, so not a big problem, but I did lose my train of thought, which is long, long, long gone. Never gonna see it again. But still, where was I? I think I was just wrapping up. So, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Season 1 was just a fantasy romp, and it was really fun. Season 2 was very saturated and cheesy and just... I didn't like it. I really didn't. And seeing that there's more of that to come isn't making me want to keep watching. But I am going to, and I'll probably give you guys an update when I watch more of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure and catch up with Jotaro's half-brother, whose name is Jodalus Joshua Jampin. His name's Jampin. Jampin. Anyways, that's it. Thank you for understanding about my injury. I am getting better, and there will now be episodes daily as far as I can until I either get really sick of doing that, can't do it because of internet, or just decide that I need a good old-fashioned day to just think and recover and recuperate, which I've taken a couple of those. Not this time, though. These 2 days have been just me being injured, which is just fine with me. So, thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you all on the flip side.